Good morning. Good morning. Happy Wednesday. Happy Wellness Wednesday. I hope you are having a fabulous day. If this is the first time you are stumbling on my page, my name is Donna. I am a mom, a nana, a wellness advocate, a grad school student who just started a quick break in between terms. I love jazzercise. I love line dancing. I love running. I own an activewear boutique. So many things. But most importantly, I am the perpetrator of this Wellness Wednesday. Usually when you see me, it's either going to be directly before or directly after a workout. So that's why you always get the ponytail. If you are just stumbling on my page, I hope you will find something here that's helpful. Last week we talked about mindfulness, and it was a great video. I actually got quite a few messages on that. And I'm happy that it was helpful to some people. I always love hearing how something has helped you. If you have not seen it yet, there's two ways that you can. You can let me know and I'll tag you in it. I can drop it in the comments of this video. Or you can just go to the videos tab on my Facebook page and go back through all of the Wellness Wednesday videos. That could be quite entertaining for quite some time. But I do like to take a lighter approach once in a while because so often wellness, which covers so many things, ends up being more of a mindset dig, because that's really what everything boils down to, or what most of it does. So I like to take a lighter approach once in a while. And over the weekend, I had a volunteer event that I was working at. And I also had two of the hardest papers of my second term of grad school due, by midnight Central Time, on Sunday. So it was a really, really busy weekend. And after the golf event that I volunteered at, I had decided that probably the best way to deal with what I still had to do was to come home from the golf event, eat dinner, take a 90-minute nap, because I knew a little something about the times that you should be napping, and then get up and just power through until I was done. Well, that was a tremendous fail. Not only did it not end up being a 90-minute nap, but I actually just ended up staying asleep for the whole night and getting up at like 5 to go ahead and finish those papers. But it made me think of napping, and napping was heavily on my mind. Of course, we had the time change over the weekend too. Then I learned, after I had already decided that napping was going to be my topic for the day, I learned that Monday was actually National Napping Day. So that just kind of sealed it for me. I knew that this was what I was supposed to be talking about, and there was a reason it was on my mind. And is it any wonder that National Napping Day was actually right after we did the time change? So we sprung forward, we lost an hour, and National Napping Day was henceforth on Monday. So in any case, today we're going to talk about napping. So if you're here, let me know you're here. If you don't see this till afterwards, let me know you saw it with a replay or question or whatever. Sometimes Facebook shows me all the things and sometimes they don't. So if you are saying hi or you ask a question or make a comment and I don't respond to it or acknowledge you, it's because Facebook didn't show me, and I will when I get done. So let's talk about naps. Why is napping good? This section is also known as Donna's Nerd Facts. I joke all the time about little nerd facts. So here we go. 1/3 of Americans are sleep deprived, which is also roughly the same number of Americans that nap on a regular basis. I wonder if there's a correlation. Of course there is. Another nerd fact. NASA tested power napping and found that it boosted performance and alertness. So if the astronauts are power napping, then maybe we should be too, right? That's the first thing you would think of. Napping boosts memory, it lifts mood, and it eases stress, even if you just rest for an hour without sleeping. What? Is that a thing? I know. We're going to talk about that in a minute. Sleep helps with better memory. There's something about sleep, and I don't remember, nor will I get into all of the legal, medical mumbo jumbo, but basically sleep is one of the primary things that helps your memory, short-term memory, convert to long-term memory. So sleep definitely helps with memory on a number of levels, that I am not even equipped to begin to understand. My grad school studies are in clinical mental health counseling, not in the medical world. So maybe a little taste of the medical world, but that's about it. So sleep helps with memory. Naps are better than caffeine for memory and learning. Now, this doesn't surprise me at all. While I do partake of caffeine from time to time, I do know the negative effects that it has on me. And I do know that naps, I have lemon water in the morning, and sometimes even an apple can give me just as much energy or help me get over a sleepy hump as much as a caffeine can. And actually, the less caffeine I consume, the less likely I am to have those mid-afternoon dips where I feel like I need a nap. So there's a lot more there we could dig into, but not for today. So naps are better than caffeine for memory and learning. The benefits of napping are the strongest for those who have a sleep deficit, or what we now call a sleep debt, I guess. You know, jargon changes every couple of years, so now we're calling it a sleep debt versus a sleep deficit. 45 to 60-minute naps lower blood pressure. I did my notes wrong. It says blood sugar, and that's not quite correct. 45 to 60-minute naps lower blood pressure after a mentally stressful event. Now, I found that very interesting because my father, who doesn't really have seizures anymore, but has epilepsy and did have seizures quite often for a long time, the type known as petit mal, he would always nap immediately, like within a few minutes after a seizure. If he was sitting down, he would be asleep. But it was usually only about a 30 to 45-minute nap. It was a short one. But a seizure is both physically and mentally draining, so neurologically draining. So that makes sense. It makes sense to me that it would lower blood pressure after mental stress, because sometimes some things, events that happen with our body kind of just automatically put us into a nap state afterwards. Making it a habit may improve cardio and brain health, meaning by brain health that it may be protective against dementia, but longer naps may actually create more problems with cognition. So that would be naps over 90 minutes. We're going to talk about that a little bit more in just a minute. So here's an interesting, put caffeine back in the equation. An interesting factoid that I ran across on a few different websites while I was researching this was that drinking coffee, and I was surprised to see this, drinking coffee before you nap actually can help you wake up more refreshed. And if you're doing the nap, if the nap is 30 minutes or less, the reason why this works is because you drink the coffee, unless you're a sipper like me, if you have it and you're like, I love my coffee, my precious, and you're sipping on it, maybe not so much. But if you drink a cup of coffee before you lay down for a 30-minute nap, the caffeine takes about 30 minutes to kick in. So at that point, you would be waking up from your nap, so you'd have the power nap under your belt and the caffeine kicking in, and you wake up feeling like you own the world, right? So why do we have issues with naps as adults? Some people just don't do well with naps, and historically, I have been one of these people. Something I still struggle with. Generally speaking, if I'm napping, one of two things is going on. I'm either coming down with something or sick already, or I am back on the half marathon training program and therefore need naps until my body gets used to that kind of long distance running again. When I push my body, when I do longer workouts, I do double classes at Jazzercise, I do tend to sleep a little bit longer or need sleep a little bit more. And when I was training for half marathons, my long runs were on Sundays. And then I found it very easy to nap. I would run anywhere from 5 to 12 miles. And then I would come home and I would eat breakfast. And before I would start my schoolwork, because I was studying for my bachelor's at the time, before I would start my schoolwork, I would lay down and take a nap. And then as my body got stronger and got more acclimated to that longer distance, I didn't need the naps anymore. So, some of us just don't do well with naps. And why is that? Well, first of all, some of us are genetically predisposed to need more hours of continuous sleep, which means those shorter segments of sleep just don't work. Our body wants and craves longer sleep. So some of it is a genetic predisposition. We also, some of us, have trouble slowing our brains down. A lot of times for me, I might have liked the idea of a nap, or maybe felt like I needed a little nap, but I had too many things run into my head that I needed to be done, felt like I was wasting time, and couldn't bring myself to spend that time on the couch. Of course, This was also in the years before I knew that cat naps and power naps were really a thing that actually did work. So to me, a nap was a lost hour to 3 hours of the day, where I wasn't getting anything accomplished, and that wasn't acceptable to my brain. So high anxiety or people that have a lot going on that have trouble stopping and taking a break from those things during the day, we're going to have difficulty slowing down to take a nap. Especially if we think that nap has to be 1 to 3 hours to do any good, which is absolutely not true. So if that is you, if you have trouble slowing your brain down, relaxing enough during the day to take a nap, then you might consider a brief meditation first to just kind of do the breathing and to bring you back down to kind of homeostasis. Another issue is sleep inertia. And I found a story online when I was researching this that kind of described it perfectly, because I have also, usually with those longer naps, another reason I don't nap is because I sometimes wake up feeling like I've been run over by a Mack truck. And that's actually a thing, and it's called sleep inertia. And it happens when you are napping at a length where you're waking up in the middle of an important sleep cycle, a deeper sleep cycle, which has to do with the circadian rhythm. But most people by now know that our natural sleep cycles are 30 to 90 minutes. And within those cycles, there's 3 or 4 things happening. There's REM sleep, and there's slow wake sleep, and a lot of other medical terminology I don't understand, that I'm not going to try to relay to you, but you get the idea. Our sleep cycles are generally 30 to 90 minutes. And that has a lot to do with what the length of your nap time recommendation is going to be, according to the experts. But this particular description of what it's like to take a nap, and the name of this article was, "So You Say You Can't Nap, But Have You Tried This?" And this is the first paragraph, which describes my feelings towards napping, or what they used to be, perfectly. "Waking up from a nap for me feels precisely as I imagine it might feel to rise from the dead." Anybody identify with this? Bleary, disorienting, and a bit like I've begun quietly decomposing in the time since my last bout of consciousness. In fact, my post-nap state tends to resemble some specific genre of unprecedented hangover, the likes of which will generally render all other daytime productivity near impossible. And that is, of course, if I can fall asleep in the first place, the process of which acts as its own insurmountable hurdle. Long story short, I am firmly nap opposed. And this is a perfect description. I was dying laughing when I saw this. This is a perfect description of how I felt about naps. That if I did actually manage to get to sleep, when I woke up, I did feel like I was rising from the dead. My limbs felt glued to the bed, to the couch, to the whatever. And I was in a fog for at least an hour after waking up. Even with caffeine. So I just stopped. I just didn't even try naps. So that's what we call sleep inertia. And a lot of times it occurs, like I said, when you are interrupting a deep sleep cycle. So, and finally, one of the reasons you may have trouble napping as an adult is because, are you ready for this? You might actually be getting all of the sleep you need. There are a lot of people, I personally know a lot of people, who think that they need 9 to 11 hours of sleep a night, or some ratio thereof. And most of the time that's actually not the case. How much sleep you need depends on how you sleep, how old you are, your genetics. There's a lot of factors in there. And so much so that when I started looking at a couple of little tips about sleep, I decided that it's worth having a whole separate conversation about your actual nighttime sleep, which could probably be at least another page of notes. So that I think is what we're going to talk about next week. I don't know. I might sleep on it. But in any case, one of the reasons you may have trouble napping is you may be getting all of the sleep you need at night, and that is why. So how, when, and where should we nap? Well, if you are experiencing a new fatigue or unexpected sleepiness during the day, then you might want to consider a nap. Sometimes that happens. Sometimes we're sleep deprived. Maybe we didn't sleep as well the night before as we thought we did or as we wanted to. We may be feeling a little extra sleep deprivation. So if we are experiencing a new fatigue, or we went to 2 classes in a row at our local jazzercise, Zumba, whatever, and we're feeling especially tired, we might need a little bit of a nap to recover. So new fatigue or unexpected sleepiness is absolutely a reason to consider taking a nap. If you are preparing for sleep loss, for example, I had it in my head that I was going to have to basically pull the equivalent of an all-nighter to get my papers finished for last weekend. So that is why in my mind, I planned to eat and then take a 90-minute nap so that I could power through that. Well, my body said, no, that's not going to happen. But a lot of times people will nap in preparation for sleep loss. If they know they're going to have a shorter night because they have to get up earlier than usual and they're having trouble winding down, or they go to bed at the same time every night, but they're going to be up a lot earlier, so they know they're going to have trouble going to bed any earlier. Or if like I said, any reason that you might be able to think of that you know that you're going to be sleep deprived, you have an early flight, whatever, then sometimes a short nap in the early afternoon is a good idea to prepare for that sleep loss. And that's essentially what I was trying to do Saturday night that didn't go so well. When to nap? Well, before 3 p.m. Some experts say before 2 p.m. And I can attest to this because on the rare occasion that I do nap, if it's any later than that, if I'm actually, and none of them had a clear statement as to, is this when you start your nap? Because if you're an overthinker like me, the question is going to be, is this when I start my nap or is this when I finish my nap? Do I start it at 3? Do I finish it at 3? Should I start it at 2 and finish it by 3? You can see where this could go, right? So before 3 p.m., some experts say before 2 p.m. I can attest to that. If I nap and I am not up by 3 o'clock, I'm going to have trouble going to sleep that night. I'm going to be ready and raring to go for an extra 2 hours, even if it was only a 30-minute nap. So the reason that the experts say 2 to 3 o'clock in the afternoon is because typically for most adults, if you're not getting enough sleep, or even sometimes if you are, your circadian rhythm slows down mid-afternoon. So that is part of the reason behind those afternoon sleepies we sometimes get at work. The other reason behind those afternoon sleepies is maybe improper diet or too much caffeine in the morning, and then we experience a little bit of a crash in the afternoon. Frankly, when I stopped drinking coffee altogether for several years, I didn't have those afternoon sleepies as long as I was eating a proper diet. But our circadian rhythm does tend to slow down in the afternoon, especially if you are experiencing any kind of sleep deprivation or sleep debt. So that is why that's the recommended time for a nap. And again, the experts say before 3 p.m., some even say before 2. It's kind of all over the place in that department. Some people say that the best time, especially for older adults, is between 1 and 3 o'clock. But they're all falling within that same time frame. So how long should the nap be? Well, there's a lot of different schools of thought on this. Some say 10 minutes, some say 20 minutes, some say 30 minutes. All of them say that it should never be more than 30 minutes or less than 90. And that's because of that sleep cycle thing, that 30-60 minute sleep cycle. Most recommendations indicate that, like we talked about the 45 to 60 minute naps to lower blood pressure after mental stress, 45 is probably not good. It's going to put you waking up in the middle of a sleep cycle. And that is when you are going to, most likely to, not necessarily going to, but most likely to experience that sleep inertia that we talked about and I just described, that feels like you're rising from the dead with a hangover like no other. So be the cat. That's what I'm here to tell you. Be the cat. Cat naps, cats know what they're doing. They take cat naps. My grandmother, God rest her soul, she was amazing, but she was a fan of the power nap, of the cat nap. But she would set her alarm religiously, and she was doing this years ago before I even ever understood napping, and at a time in my life where I just didn't unless I was sick. She would set her alarm. She would lay down and she would say, I'm going to go take a power nap for 30 minutes. And she would set her alarm, and when her alarm went off, she would get up. And those are the keys. So you're looking at 15 to 30 minutes is generally the sweet spot for a power nap. And I can attest that I have done this a few times, and it does really work. It's rare for me to do it, but I have done it. It really does work. And that if you stay in that 15 to 30 minute range, then you avoid getting into a deep sleep stage where you're going to feel like you're raising from the dead when you wake up. It's really important to set an alarm, set a timer, whatever. And then there's some important things to happen afterwards. If you are going to nap longer, it really needs to be that 90-minute length of time. Anything longer than 90 minutes might be too much, and it might really, truly disturb your sleep cycle. 90 minutes is that sweet spot where you should be coming out of a deep sleep cycle into a light sleep cycle and find it easier to wake up and get moving. So where? So we talked about how, we've talked about when, but now where? Well, in a quiet, dark place with no distractions. Good morning, Danielle. Now that doesn't always work for me. Sometimes a nap, because if I go climb into that bed and I shut the door, it's not going to be a cat nap, y'all. It's going to be like a 4-hour nap marathon. I guarantee it. Because the bed is so stinking comfortable. I already have trouble getting out of it in the morning. So a lot of times that they say quiet, dark place with no distractions, that's not really ever worked for me. Generally what I'll do is I'll lay down on the couch or I'll nod off in a chair because I know that at some point being uncomfortable or moving is actually going to help me wake up. So that's a little strategery on my part, and that has to do with knowing your body. So quiet, dark place, no distractions is generally what's recommended. If you have trouble napping, the experts recommend that you do things your brain associates with bedtime. That means putting on a pair of pajamas, getting the blanket that you know is your favorite blanket for adding weight or whatever that will help you get to sleep. Doing things like as if you were getting ready for bed because your brain associates those with bedtime, and it might make it more likely for you to be able to take a little nap. If you are a meditator or enjoy meditation, right before you lay down for a nap is a good idea, as I mentioned before, to kind of help still your brain and keep you from laying there and thinking about all the things you need to do. If you are having trouble getting to sleep when you're trying to nap, you can lay there and think about all the things that you need to do. If you're like me, one of two things will happen. The list will either bore you to sleep, or you'll be suddenly re-energized and get up and not need the nap anyway because you'll be like, I got to do this and I got to do this. But generally speaking, I do the same things. If I'm going to plan on laying down for a little bit of a nap, I will do the same things I do at bedtime. One of those key things for me, and I know this is a no-no, but I know a lot of us do it, is I have the TV on. I have the TV on for about 90 minutes at bedtime. And it's usually an old sitcom rerun like Golden Girls, where I don't have to look at I've seen it so many times that all the episodes, y'all, that I don't even have to look at the TV to know what's going on. I can just listen to it and have my eyes closed. It kind of drowns out any other noises going on in the house. So if I'm going to lay down for a cat nap, that I will do the same thing. I will put on the TV, something old that I've seen a million times for a little white noise in the background. So if you're having trouble napping, that's something you can do. Also, it's important, like my grandmother, to get up right away when your alarm goes off, when you wake up, whatever, whether you're in the bed, whether you're on the floor, couch, whatever, when you wake up from your nap, when that timer goes off, that alarm, get right up and get moving, because otherwise, as I'm sure, like, I can't tell you how many times I've woke up at 5 o'clock in the morning before my alarm went off. But if I lay there in bed for a few minutes because it's so snuggly and comfortable and warm, my butt will fall back to sleep. Whereas when I woke up, I felt alert, and I know that if I would have, and I get mad at myself because I know if I would have gotten out of bed at that time, I would have been fine. I would not have fallen back asleep, and I wouldn't have felt like I needed to. So if you are napping, you set that alarm or that timer and get up. Sometimes it helps to set the alarm somewhere else in the house. That's also a story for another day. Because one of these days, my boyfriend may actually kill me for my snooze buttons. In any case, get up right when you wake up from the nap, and then do something energizing afterwards. You know, if you get up in the morning and the first thing you do is jump in the shower, brush your teeth, whatever, that may be, you may need to do what you normally do in the morning so you feel like you're starting your day. Right after a power nap might be a great time to go for a walk, get a workout in, whatever. It depends on your situation, but there's a lot of different things you can do to get yourself moving and energized right away, and that's as important as getting up right away when your alarm goes off. So, some things to remember. And this is really important. And I have a story about this too. You don't have to lose consciousness for your nap to count. What? That means you don't actually have to fall asleep for your nap to count. There's another word. It's called rest. And it actually works. And I've done that before too. I've laid down for a nap. I've put on an old show. Maybe I haven't seen that episode as many times, or for whatever reason, the TV is a little bit more distracting than usual. And I just lay there and I rest, and I don't ever actually fall asleep. But I can tell you that after laying there and resting for 15 to 30 minutes, even if I didn't actually fall asleep, I still feel better. I had a friend that would not go to yoga with me because the first time she went to yoga, she thought she was falling asleep during meditation. She wasn't actually falling all the way asleep. She still woke up when the yoga teacher, it was Shavasana at the end of the yoga routine. So there's a little bit of meditation there for those of you that are familiar, where you're just laying and your whole body's relaxing. And she thought she was falling asleep, but there is that stage, and there's names for it, and there's all kinds of information out there on that, but there's that stage where and I know you're familiar with what I'm talking about, where you're not quite asleep and you're not quite awake. And there's a lot of different schools of thought on that stage of sleep, whatever, if it's really a stage of sleep, or that sleep awake stage. And you know what I'm talking about. It's that stage where maybe you're starting to dream a little bit, but it's mixing with whatever you're aware of is going on around you. It's kind of a neat place to be, but that is actually one of the most restful states you can be in. And it is considered true rest, and it can be very recharging, even if you don't get all the way to sleep. So you don't have to lose consciousness for your nap to count. Laying there for 15 minutes and drifting off just a little bit where you're still kind of aware of what's going on around you, but not all the way to sleep, does count as restorative rest. And it absolutely is. If you haven't tried it before, try it sometimes. It's actually great. A sudden increase. So the next thing to remember is a sudden increased need for no obvious cause might be a flag. If you are finding yourself suddenly needing extra rest on a regular basis all the time, when that wasn't the norm before, then it may be due to medications you're on. It may be due to a sleep disorder, a disruption in sleep that you're experiencing. It can be due to a lot of things. But if you have never historically been a napper, and all of a sudden you find yourself napping on a regular basis, then you might want to examine what has changed in the last few weeks or during that time, and maybe even chat with a doctor, because that could in fact be a sign that something is going on. And then finally, the last thing to remember, and I'm actually going to wrap this up within 30 minutes today. The final thing to remember is if the nap throws off your sleep, or you don't feel refreshed after a nap, no matter how long it is, or how often you try, or what you do, you just might be one of those people that doesn't benefit from napping. And it might just be either because A, you need more continuous sleep to get the benefits, or B, you're actually getting enough sleep at night. So that is it for today. That's my story about the art of napping. Even this young lady that told this a beautiful story about how she was firmly nap-opposed did in fact learn how to nap, and she was better for it. So it is a skill you can teach yourself. It is an art. But again, most recommendations indicate that those naps should be 15 to 30 minutes, absolutely no more than 30 minutes. And if you didn't fall all the way asleep, check yourself, pay attention, see if you still feel better when you get up, because I know on several occasions I have. So if you loved this, let me know, drop a comment. If you aren't too sure about it, we're going to take it a step further. Next week, we are going to, good morning, Miss Patricia. I don't think Facebook is showing me all the things this morning, but I'm glad to see you. So if you're not sure about the napping thing, we're going to take it a step further. And next week, we're going to go ahead and talk a little bit more about sleep. We're actually going to dig in. I have a cool tip for how to figure out. Works for most people, not all people, but a cool tip to help you figure out just exactly how much sleep you might need at night. And of course, there will be some nerd facts. But yeah, we're going to take this a step further. So today's about napping. Next week, we're going to talk about the real deal, the real 8-hour, 7-hour, 9-hour, whatever it is for you nap that we call sleeping. And I hope you found this helpful. If you found this helpful, please feel free to share it. Drop a comment, let me know. And tune in next week when we get a little more into the sleeping thing with a few tips for that. And as always, if you have ideas, send me a message. I love to learn. I love to research. If it's not something I already know about, I will find out about it and find out if there's a way to work it into a near future Wellness Wednesday. So again, I hope you found this helpful. If you want to see last week's video on mindfulness, let me know. I'll tag you in it. I'll drop it in the comments here. Otherwise, go forth and nap. Conquer with a nap. I am actually probably going to have a little sleep deprivation tonight. So we'll see if I actually end up laying down for a little short nap at some point today. But since I'm going to be in a car all day tomorrow, traveling to a business event, I may have the opportunity to nap there too. So we'll see. But if you do decide to take a nap, just remember, try to keep it 15 to 30 minutes or 90 minutes. That is the ideal times. That is the sweet spot to improve your cognition, cement your memory, help with your cardiovascular health, and make you feel recharged for whatever is coming afterwards. I hope you have a fabulous day. Make it wonderful. And most importantly, be well. I will see you next week. Bye.